Okay, thank you very much. The next speaker, Professor George Morishita. So may I introduce to you next speaker from online, Tokyo, Japan, Professor George Morishita. Professor George Morishita is a professor at Tokyo University of Marine Science and Technology in Tokyo, Japan. He has led and still is leading Japanese delegations in many fisheries management treaties and organizations, including in the Commission for the Conservation of Antarctic Marine Living Resources. The acronym for this one is CCAMLR, CCAMLR, and he will talk on this topic today. So, Professor Morishita, the Zoom is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shibata Sensei. Let me just share my screen with you. Okay. Hope you can see my screen, the first page of my screen of a full screen presentation.
Yes, we do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. First of all, let me thank Shibata Sensei and his team and Kobe University for this opportunity for me to join this very important, interesting symposium about the Antarctic situation. And I also have to apologize that I cannot join the meeting in person because of my other commitment in this morning on Tokyo side, eastern side of Japan. So let me just join you through this online. As Shibata Sensei has just introduced, I'm currently heading a Japanese delegation to CCAMLR, the Antarctic Marine Living Resources Organization. And before I'm going into my presentation itself, very briefly, I will give you what CCAMLR is all about. This is, of course, part of Antarctic Treaty System, as Professor Oswald just explained in his presentation. And sometimes sort of a dual responsibility of CCAMLR is the conservation of marine living resources and marine ecosystem in the Antarctic Ocean. At the same time, they have a responsibility for managing fisheries being conducted in the Antarctic Ocean. Actually, many countries are conducting some fisheries activities in the Antarctic Ocean, including some of the EU countries and China and Australia and other countries. Japan has only one fishing vessel operating. They are targeting mainly a krill, one of the animal plankton look like a shrimp, and also a toothfish, which is very expensive and in many parts of the world. So the CCAMLR has a dual face of Regional Fisheries Management Organization and Environmental Conservation Organization. With this background, the main purpose of my presentation today is what is happening and where this organization is going currently. The CCAMLR just recently had its 41st meeting in Hobart, Australia, from the end of October to the beginning of November. This was the first face-to-face meeting, in-person meeting for the last 2 or 3 years. And because it just finished, the formal report is not public yet. There is only 1 or 2 page summary of a main result of CCAMLR 41 on the website of CCAMLR. The screen you are now looking at is part of that the page of the main outcomes. Interestingly, the outcomes are mainly points that they had some agreement. So they do not explain about the situation where they did not have any agreement. I just pick up only 2 or 3 items from that website. As you can see, one is about marine protected area, MPAs. And currently, under CCAMLR, they have 2 MPAs and already established, and 3 MPA proposals on the table. Some of them has been on the table for a long, long time. And those 3 proposals, although there were some discussions, made no progress during CCAMLR 41 meeting. Because of a lack of a progress, the CCAMLR decided to have a special meeting just dedicated to the discussion of MPAs in the first half of 2023, probably somewhere in Chile. Secondly, this is one of the few agreements they had. They had a new resolution on climate change. They already had some 1 or 2 climate change resolutions in the past, but this time they renewed their commitment about the addressing the issue of climate change under the competence activities under the competence of CCAMLR. So now all the scientific groups under CCAMLR is now required to include consideration of climate change in their deliberations. Finally, this is probably noteworthy, that CCAMLR has a system of electing the chair in alphabetical order. And the next chair, right after the end of CCAMLR 41, happened to be Ukraine. And of course, Russian Federation is part of a CCAMLR system. So as you can imagine, before CCAMLR 41, we were concerned that what might be happening around the issue of election of a chairship or succession of a chairship to Ukraine. Fortunately, Ukraine was confirmed as the next chair of CCAMLR for the next 2 years. These are main outcomes. And like I said, there are a lot of discussion items which did not come to any conclusion. So the report from CCAMLR 41 is not available or not public yet. Just to give you a sense of how the CCAMLR discussions are happening in recent years, I just show you 1 or 2 items included in the reports of CCAMLR 40. The one happened last year. This was a remote meeting, so not extensive discussion as like usual in-person meeting took place. However, it is in a sense telling the situation surrounding CCAMLR. One item I like to just explain is the spatial management, which is in other words, a consideration of proposals for the establishment of marine protected areas. Like I said, there are 3 marine protected area proposals on the table, but that discussion did not progress during the last CCAMLR meeting, CCAMLR 40. Paragraph 7.2 of last year's meeting, as you can find out from this one, Russia submitted some papers, and they argued that some unified process for establishment of MPAs are needed. This sounds reasonable, but this is a argument that Russia has been using for the last few years to deny the discussion of the details of each specific MPA proposals. And they demanded that the development of a unified process is needed before actually to discuss the specific proposals for establishment of MPAs. And many members other than Russia, actually supported the adoption of 3 proposed MPAs, and they established a strong sense of disappointment to the situation that CCAMLR makes no progress. Paragraph 7.24 is a statement from EU and its members, and as you can see, they are saying that very clearly that it is regrettable for EU that Russia is actually blocking the progress of MPA discussions, and this is a missed opportunity for the CCAMLR. I will just explain another one, which is the fisheries side of CCAMLR. Toothfish fishery management is important responsibility of CCAMLR, and there is one controversial point or issue over toothfish fishery. This is conducted in area 48.3, and this is within the actually the UK's 200-mile zone surrounding Falkland Islands, or those who are coming from Argentine side, it's the Malvinas Islands. And this is within 200-mile zone, but conservation measures as well as catch quota is to be decided by CCAMLR discussion. And Russia has been preventing this the establishment of a catch quota for this particular area, 48.3. And as a result, based on its own decision, the UK actually proceeded to go ahead with the fisheries activities within their claim of a 200-mile zone. So from some aspects of CCAMLR conservation and management measures, the UK's activities are based on the situation that there is no conservation and management measures in place. But claim of Russian, or scientific claim of Russian side, which essentially says the UK fishery is taking a smaller juvenile toothfish too much, so that damage is done on the stocks. But almost all other scientists in the CCAMLR scientific committee have not agreed with this assessment and provided a lot of papers and scientific evidence to prove the Russian claim is wrong. But Russia has never changed its position. And because of a consensus decision system, the conservation and management measures to 48.3 has not adopted, even at the last meeting yet. To make things more complicated, because of this situation, Argentina now claims that the UK fisheries are IUU fisheries because they are not based on the conservation and management measures of CCAMLR. So we have a very complicated situation involving Argentina, UK, and Russia now, and the issue of international law, as well as the effectiveness of CCAMLR, as well as a scientific argument for and against Russian scientists. And there are many other issues that Russia, and sometimes supported by China, that is preventing the consensus building in CCAMLR. At CCAMLR 40 last year, actually the report from scientific committee did have many incompleted parts. This is very exceptional for any international organizations that the scientific body have to provide a report which is incomplete or which has a lot of brackets so that they couldn't adapt the report itself. Usually, under those circumstances, they try to find some middle ground or to use or to just describe the differences of opinion. But they even couldn't do that at the last scientific committee meeting. And I just talked about 48.3. There are another area called 48.4.1, where multiple countries are conducting so-called exploratory fishery science, the fishery that is established in order to collect some scientific data for the future possible established fisheries. Russian scientists also argue that this exploratory fishery activity by multiple countries are against science because they are using all different fishing gears, and some standardization of a fishing gear is important. The scientists conducting those exploratory fisheries provided the counter arguments, also proposals, and also the evidence that the change or difference of fishing gear can be actually addressed through scientific the considerations. The Russian scientists has never say yes or accept those arguments. As a result, exploratory fisheries in this 48.4.1 has been stopping for a long time now. Also on the side of conservation of marine environment as well as promotion of a pure science in the Antarctic Ocean, the CCAMLR has a system to strengthen the scientific research in the area of a newly exposed area. That means if ice shelf has broken down, you will see a newly exposed sea surface, and that's a situation or phenomenon of a concern. But at the same time, that is the chance as well as a challenge for scientists to collect scientific data, because some change and very quick changes actually happening now. So the CCAMLR has some system to strengthen the science, in this case called Stage 2 Special Area for Scientific Study, and this was also prevented by Russia. The final one, the revised resolution on climate change, as I just explained, this was actually agreed eventually at the last CCAMLR meeting, CCAMLR 41, but that was after a long discussion and disagreement in the previous CCAMLR meetings. In order to close my presentation, just let me throw out some questions we can think about based on the happenings and non-happenings of our CCAMLR discussions. So the obvious question is why China and Russia are blocking many consensus, potential consensus agreements. Is this a difference in scientific views or interpretation, or some differences in legal interpretation of conservation measures, like a standardization or establishment of MPA? Or do they have some fundamental discontent with the ATS system, so they like to disrupt the discussion in CCAMLR? Maybe they have some discontent with the current world order. That means Professor Roswell just talked about rule-based order, rule-based international order. But from their point of view, the rule is established by predominantly Western, the advanced Western countries. So they may not have the same opinion about world order as we are seeing from many other international discussions where they are involved. But what did they actually achieve by blocking consensus in CCAMLR? And another question is, China and Russia is actually collaborating, or they are acting independently but in similar manner? If they are intentionally blocking the consensus, what are their final goals? After discussion of those questions, then our obvious next step is to think about what can we do then. Are we actually having a real dialogue with China and Russia? And if not, how can we actually establish the true dialogue geared towards the resolution of our current situation? Any international negotiation agreement is based on a principle of probably give and take when they have a very different positions. Then what can we actually offer to China and Russia in order to gain something from, if I can say, our side? Can we learn something from their behavior in the Arctic context? The question for this reason, the reason for this question is I'm also involved in the Arctic fisheries agreement discussions where both China and Russia are the members. And sometimes they do behave differently, but they do behave similarly in other aspects in the Arctic. Are there any connections or something we can learn? And are we now looking at the shift to a new world order, whatever it is? And do we have to think about the situation in the Antarctic in the context of a larger change in the world? I will close my presentation at this stage so that we can discuss those issues, if you like, during the panel discussion on the Q&A session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Morishita Sensei, and very compelling question that you posed that we would very much like to go into the discussions right away, but I think we leave that for the panel discussions after all the speeches. Thank you, Morishita Sensei, again.